Just let him kind of go off on some other stuff. Can you speak to, I mean, I look at Russia, what they're doing right now with Crimea and what's happening. Okay, good. So so this is just going to be kind of cash, guys. Hey, internet segment, but I just want to, since we've got an expert here in the room.
That Turkey thing, and see, they were the ones who went back to Iran and told them when one of the Iranian scientists met with the Israelis to let them know what was really going on in Iran. It was the Turks who gave them up.
Say that again. The Turks gave up.
The Turks, there was a meeting in Turkey with a senior Iranian scientist who met with the Israelis to tell them all the really bad things that were going on in Iran with the regime, and it was the Turks who gave him up. And I say, get those nuclear weapons out of there.
Something just doesn't add up with the whole Turkey thing.
No, no.
Okay. Okay, good. Thanks. Sorry. Maybe we'll have that as B-roll as well. Here's an internet segment we want to do just to really get into talk more about the new terrorism, how to fight it and how to defeat it. Van Hipp, thanks for sticking around for this. And I want to talk sort of a bigger picture now. I'm not a history expert, and I start looking at patterns, and I go, okay, we look at, Japan and Germany back in World War II, what was going on there, and I'm looking at what Putin's doing with, annexing Crimea, and then you've got obviously a situation in the Middle East. Are we already in World War III, or how fast is it going to be here full-blown?
I've said for some time that this whole fight against Islamic fascism really is World War III. And as far as Putin is concerned, I mean, basically you've got an old KGB agent who is just posing as the president of Russia. And we keep sending all the wrong signals. When we take our U.S. military, our U.S. Army down to pre-World War II levels, when we cut missile defense for our allies, our new NATO allies like Hungary and Poland, when you do those kinds of things, and then we're surprised that Putin goes into the Crimea, that he begins to threaten action in the Baltic, you send the wrong message to a thug like that. I think it's important, you talk about history, to look at what prior presidents did to the old Russian bear. John F. Kennedy had the guts to stand up to Khrushchev in the Cuban Missile Crisis. Richard Nixon knew how to outfox the Russian bear and play the Chinese off against them. And look what Ronald Reagan did, who ended really his efforts to end the Cold War. We need that kind of leadership in America today.
Speaking about Russia, and I want to have you speak to this as well. We talked a little bit off camera about the oil here and what's happening in North Dakota, but I look at this and I go, okay, now you've got the Russians now giving missiles to the Iranians in trade for oil. They're going to start buying up their oil. The Russian and Chinese are now trading oil in the yen rather than the petrodollar. What do you see happening here? Because it scares me. I think Saudi Arabia is going to freak out and go, wait a second, I don't have as much power as I once thought I did.
Yeah. All a thug like Putin understands is strength. And when we keep showing weakness, he keeps on moving the ball down the field. If I were commander-in-chief, and the president also went to Brussels, to NATO last year, and said that Georgia, the country of Georgia, who we have supported for NATO membership since 2005, and all, said is not currently on a pathway to NATO membership. When you do things like that, you send the wrong signal. Instead, what the president should have done is gotten on a plane and gone to Budapest and gone to Warsaw and say, I'm going to reverse my decision on missile defense. We're going to have a full missile defense capability for the people of Eastern Europe.
And we're leaving Ukrainians out to dry too, aren't we?
Absolutely.
So what do we do? Because I look at what Putin's doing, and it's very similar to how Hitler sort of just take over Poland and Austria and these different areas. I guess my question is, what's the answer? How do we start to go? Because Obama's, I don't see the leadership there. And maybe is there going to be a 2016 candidate in the Republican Party that you think can step up? And
I certainly hope so. But we've got, this is, if ever there was a time for American leadership, this is now. And we have to have a commander-in-chief who has a sense of history. We can learn from history, just like what you've been saying. We can learn from history. And history does have a tendency to repeat itself. And unfortunately, I think we're seeing that right now.
Quickly, talk to me about Prime Minister Bibi coming over here to speak in front of Congress, your thoughts on that, and also this Iran nuke deal. Where are you at with that?
Well, first of all, I've looked historically a lot of the link between Iran, for example, and North Korea. And there's a real link between them on their nuclear program and their missile program. When Bibi came over here, it was not coincidental that Kim Jong-un in North Korea fired off one of his missiles again. Again, when we try to cut a deal with a terrorist regime like Iran and throw allies like Israel under a bus, not only does that send the wrong message to our allies, it sends the wrong message other terrorist regimes like Kim Jong-un.
With that being said, and no one's been able to answer this question for me, and I don't know if maybe you've got some inside track on this, but Valerie Jarrett was born in Iran. Many people say that Valerie Jarrett basically runs the White House. Is she dictating a lot of these talks? And that's the only reason I can see that we're trying to do this deal.
I tell you, I've seen some of those writings too, and if it's not the case, they sure have a strange right way of showing it. But it's very, and I was actually on a panel recently, on national security panel, and that same topic and discussion came up. But
she seems kind of like the shadowy person over here. That
it just doesn't make sense what's going on. Anyone who looks at this logically is just scratching their head right
the
now.
sanctions bring him to the table, and he's going to try to. I mean, I just sometimes I look at the geopolitics, and I'm like, I must be in the twilight zone because everything's upside
and
down.
what's so bad? The young people there get it. There's a real craving for Western values and Western ideals. Look what happened several years ago. That regime was teetering, and if we had an opportunity right then, I think, to take down that regime.
Mr. Hipp, thanks for your time.
Great
I
to
could
be
talk
with
to
you.
you for hours.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And always, thanks for watching what we have going on here. So as always, you can check out our website for more interviews with great leaders like Mr. Van Hipp, 630pov.com.